Hello, Louisiana, and welcome to the Fantasy Roundup for Tuesday, October the 5th. I'm Zach Ewing with Spencer the Guru Urquhart, and we are here to answer all your fantasy football questions, to go through the week that was in fantasy football in the NFL Week 4, and to look ahead to Week 5, of course, with some waiver wire pickups and DFS plays. We're even going to talk some trades today, Spencer. It's that time of year when you got to start looking down the road to see how you'll fill in bye weeks and how to build your team for the playoffs.
Yeah, most definitely, Zach. Yeah, looking forward to getting into all that. There's some buy low, sell high, and we're 4 weeks in, so it's time to start looking at ways to improve your team for the middle run and the stretch.
Buy low, sell high, just like the stock market. That's what we're after here. Let's take a quick look back at Week 4. By the way, we're on Tuesday this week, and this is when the Fantasy Roundup will air from now on, which I think is a change for the better. We had been on Wednesday, and frankly, when you're on Wednesday, you miss the waiver wire deadline for a lot of leagues. So I'd say probably for the majority of leagues. So we're trying to come to you on Tuesday, get you that advice before your league's waiver wire deadline and before you have to really start thinking about your Week 5 lineup. So again, quickly, look back at Week 4. The top scoring quarterbacks, a familiar name at the top of the list there is Patrick Mahomes. Not a really high-scoring week by any quarterback this week. A couple of good ones. The surprise names there, maybe Sam Darnold and Taylor Heineke, Spencer.
Right. And even Matt Ryan, he is off to a bad start, and he finally had him a nice week. So, yeah, there was some new names up there for sure. You know, Mahomes, of course, being the top dog through 5 touchdowns, no surprise there. Jalen Hurts has been surprisingly consistent. I was thinking he'd be a little more up and down this year, but he's been a pretty consistent producer there, and it's been a pretty air raid Eagles offense to start the year.
We'll move on to the running backs, and there are 4 very expected names up there, and then the name at the top is the name that's, you know, if you had said this preseason, hey, the top running back in Week 4 is going to be Cordarrelle Patterson. Who? Oh, yeah, you remember him? He was a bust. But Cordarrelle Patterson, he's eligible at running back. He's really more of a receiver. He caught 3 touchdown passes in Week 4 and really won people a lot of leagues or a lot of matchups.
Most definitely, yeah. It was. I picked him up in a couple leagues, not expecting a whole lot. I was just thinking he'd be a decent guy to throw in as a flex or a second flex if you've been deeper leagues. But yeah, he's been the RB1 so far to start the year. I wouldn't expect him to keep it up, but hey, ride the wave while it's rolling. He's done amazing so far.
Yeah, he's a league winner, and we'll see in a minute when we talk about Week 4 MVPs. Spoiler alert, I chose Cordarrelle because he literally won me a league this week. And it was really just because I was in a bad spot in that particular league. He was actually eligible at wide receiver also. I was in a bad spot with injuries, just threw him in there at wide receiver 3, and lo and behold, the guy went completely off, 3 touchdown passes. Don't know that it's sustainable, but for now, like you said, you got to ride that wave. Moving on to receivers, some more familiar names. Deebo Samuel getting more familiar, of course, Tyreek Hill, Terry McLaurin. Nice week for Deontay Johnson. There's a little bit of a gap there. But speaking of gaps, like Tyreek Hill, he was a week winner for a lot of people too. 12 points clear of the next closest player at any position.
Oh, yeah. Tyreek, or Ty Freak, as they call him, is just when he has those big weeks, he'll win you the week almost by himself. He's almost kind of, it's a double-edged sword, because when he doesn't do well, a lot of times he'll only catch like 2 for 20, but when he goes off, you win. So it's one of those things. If you have solid, more consistent players around him, you'll be okay. But if you have a lot of other volatile players, man, that could be a headache.
Yeah, he's a bit of a boomer bust. And if you look at, I think Week 1 and Week 4, he had huge weeks this year, and 2 and 3, not so much. It kind of depends on what defense he's facing. Obviously, you got to play him against anybody, but it is interesting the way he kind of goes up and down there. As far as tight ends, we talked about last year, Spencer, there was George Kittle, there was Travis Kelce, and there was Darren Waller, and then there was really a wasteland at tight end. That really hasn't been the case so far this year, and this week proved it more than any.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy, the names in this list. None of these guys were projected to be even top 12 tight ends before the season, much less top 5. It was nice to see Dawson Knox do well. He's a guy I called last week saying I think he could be a great waiver wire pickup and have a big game, and sure enough, he did. And plus matchup, so that was good to see. Dalton Schultz kept his momentum going, and the really surprise of this is Mo Alley Cox. He's not even the starter in Indy, but managed to catch 2 touchdowns and have a huge week.
And CJ Uzoma there too for the Bengals. Like, I think he had caught 4 passes the first 3 games combined, and then he was the star on Thursday Night Football. I don't know that it's sustainable. I don't know that you can trust these guys as anything other than streamers. Although I will say the name you didn't mention there, Spencer, Jared Cook. Saints fans don't want to hear this. He's turned into a pretty reliable, consistent option, at least from fantasy perspective.
Yeah, he's pretty consistent there with Mike Williams being more the deep guy. And last night, Herbert didn't really have that deep connection with Mike Williams like he's had throughout the years. They had Jared Cook was able to play more to the over the middle, got a red zone guy. So in that offense, he's actually pretty decent. He's a fringe tight end 1 moving forward, I'd say.
Yeah, and I picked him up in one league where it was the league that auto drafted for me right when the hurricane started. There was no way I could get around it. Power went out after my first pick, and I ended up I'm trying to think who I even had as my first tight end, but he was injured and out for the year, and so I went and picked up Jared Cook. There, well, he won't be terrible, and he's actually turned into a pretty solid option there. So very happy with Jared Cook from a fantasy perspective. Even if Saints fans are still a little bit salty with him, maybe a lot salty with him for that fumble in the game against the Bucs last year. But from fantasy football, listen, you got to make your picks with your head and not your heart.
Yeah, definitely, man. Great point, because he's somebody that, if you need a tight end, you don't want to be trying to go after you can't expect a guy like Mo Alley Cox to have a week like that every week. Cook will be a lot more consistent.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's pick our fantasy stars for week 4. I believe that we both went with, we both sort of went with wide receivers, but I'll let you go first, Spencer.
All right, scary Terry McLaurin, man, huge week, caught a couple touchdowns, well over 100 yards. Yeah, that was great to see him there with 30 PPR points. He's put together a really nice season. The absence of Fitzmagic has not hurt him at all. He's put up WR1 numbers even with Taylor Heineke. So he's showing that he's been like that his whole career. He's been quarterback proof. He's had to work with a whole bunch of different quarterbacks there, most of them not being too good. But I have him in a lot of leagues, so I was very happy with his day.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at those numbers, like season long, he's been productive all season. And if anything, Taylor Heineke might be looking for him more than Ryan Fitzpatrick did. And that could be a defensive matchup. He's got a tougher matchup with the Saints in week 5, so we'll see. But it was nice to see him get into the end zone. He only had 1 touchdown the first 3 weeks and got in twice this week, so that will certainly help your day. My fantasy star for the week, we mentioned him, Cordarrelle Patterson of the Falcons. You see those big 3 touchdown catches. I kind of put his receivers, his stats up there as if he's a receiver first. He only had 6 carries. He had 6 targets in the passing game. So that's really what he is. I don't know that it's sustainable. I mean, the guy's been only on the field for 20, 25 snaps a game, and he's scoring a touchdown like every 8 snaps. So I don't know that. Well, I know that's not sustainable, but maybe he'll get a little bit more run. But Spencer, what's your take on Patterson? I think we'll talk about him in our buy low, sell high segment later. But I mean, is he a guy that if you have him, your price has to be pretty high to give him up right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like he's a perfect sell high candidate because he's off to such a big start, and it's to the point where the numbers speak. I mean, the numbers are good enough now to where you should be able to get at least a RB2 in return, if not another RB1. He's a top 5 running back right now, so definitely don't just give him away, because he's somebody that even if he doesn't keep this up, he could still be a solid producer throughout the year, at least a solid flex, considering how efficient he is and how much they like to utilize him in that offense there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's a guy that we've said for a couple of weeks now. I think I said it one week and you said it one week. Go pick up Cordarrelle Patterson. He's obviously involved. And the kind of the surprising thing to me is that Mike Davis hasn't completely fallen off in Atlanta. He's still usable. Maybe as more of an RB2 or a flex or a bye week fill-in, but like Mike Davis should be on rosters, even if Cordarrelle Patterson has become kind of the star there.
Right, yeah, because he's still getting the early down work and the goal line work. He had a touchdown last week. Because Patterson's basically being used as a receiver, and then the change of pace back. He's been Kind of like in Austin Eckler, except this year we've seen more Eckler between the tackles. It's kind of like the way Austin Eckler used to be, almost more of a receiver than an actual running back.
Austin Eckler, God bless you for last night, by the way. That I thought about him as my fantasy MVP too, just because he saved my butt in one league.
Yeah.
Speaking of, sort of our advice though, and saying, hey, pick up Patterson a couple of weeks ago. The key is to sort of get a week ahead of the rest of your league on this. We're going to go into waiver wire pickups here in a second. A lot of these, unless you've got one of the top couple of waiver wire positions, or you've got a lot of fab dollars, if that's your league's method of doing pickups, you're probably not getting a lot, some of these guys. But if you can get on them a week early, that's really the key. Like if you could have gotten Dawson Knox last week, you're in really good shape. This week, he's going to be in a little bit higher demand, and he's going to be available in less leagues. So having said that, let's look at your waiver wire targets for week 5, Spencer.
All righty. Yeah, starting with Trey Lance, who's expected to start this week with Jimmy Garoppolo banged up. I feel like he's got enough of that rushing ability to where even if he's not a super polished passer, he's still worth picking up. I think he could put up similar numbers to what Jalen Hurts did last year and be that dual threat sneaky ad, and definitely worth a pickup if you need a QB. A running back with David Montgomery, I know he cracked the top 5 this week, but unfortunately got hurt in the process. He's going to be out 4 to 5 weeks with a knee injury. So Damian Williams now a must add. He'll likely be the bell cow in Chicago. And then Jamison Crowder got back on the field this week, showed good chemistry with Zach Wilson, and could be a solid flex play moving forward.
No, I like that because Crowder is a PPR monster. I mean, that guy will catch, at least earlier in his career with Sam Darnold, he'd catch 8-10 balls a game. And even if he didn't score and maybe only had 65 yards or something, hey, 65 yards with 9 catches, that'll play. We'll take that from a wide receiver 3. So I like that pick of Crowder. My waiver wire target's similar to your pick of Damian Williams. This one's a little bit injury contingent. Samaje Perine of the Bengals. We saw Joe Mixon go off late in that Thursday night game. It's a low-grade ankle sprain. The Bengals coach said he's day-to-day, but also some reports say he's more like week-to-week. Chances are I think Joe Mixon probably doesn't play this week, so if you need some help at running back, this is not probably a long-term solution, but he's a guy you could pick up. No Bengals player has a carry besides Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine, so if you want some help, you want to take a flyer on somebody for this week, then or if you're a Mixon owner for sure, Perine is a guy to go after. Randall Cobb of the Packers with Marquez Valdez-Scantling on the shelf. Cobb had a big week, caught a couple of touchdown passes, made some Devontae Adams owners and Aaron Jones owners angry in the process, but he had a big week. And then Sam Darnold. I mean, Sam Darnold has a chance, I think, to be a top 10 quarterback for the full season. He ran for 2 touchdowns last week. He's not going to do that every week. But the Panthers are letting him go a little bit. They're letting him run a little bit. If you have sort of a lower-end guy as your starter, I think Sam Darnold, who's still available in 73% of leagues, is a guy to go after.
Yeah, he's a nice stream for this week, too. He gets the Eagles, so he could stream him. And if he does well, maybe keep him because, yeah, he's done really well. Surprising to see him get the rushing. He's not known for his rushing ability, but so far they've utilized him a lot in that way. Joe Brady's done really well with him, and it makes sense because he was arguably with the worst offensive system in football at the Jets, and now with the young, innovative OC and Joe Brady. So, yeah, definitely, if he can get Darnold or Lance, yeah, I'd say both are good options.
Yeah, going from Adam Gase's offense to Joe Brady's offense, like trading in your Pinto for a Lamborghini, I don't know, maybe that's too strong, but maybe not. I really think, Joe Brady, we saw what he did with Joe Burrow, and obviously Joe Burrow's a tremendous talent anyway. But so is Sam Darnold. That's kind of the point. Sam Darnold was a number 3 pick a few years back. And if you put him in a system with an offense coordinator who knows what he's doing and some weapons around him, we haven't talked much about DJ Moore, who's been nailed so far this season. Obviously, having Christian McCaffrey back maybe this week, maybe next week is going to be a big deal. But if you're Sam Darnold, Robbie Anderson has been off to a slow start, but certainly a deep ball weapon. He's got potential there in Carolina to really have a nice season.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, because it's almost like I view it as they had the old clunker car, 1999 Buick, and they traded in for brand new Camaro. Like, yeah, it's a huge upgrade, no doubt. And hopefully he can keep it up. He's got the weapons. That's another thing. McCaffrey's out right now, and he did that. So yeah, he's more I think about it, he's probably worth at least, maybe not as a star, but at least he's worth rostering for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know, again, if you've got Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, even a Jalen Hurts or a Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, you're not going to bench those guys for Sam Darnold. But if one of them were to get hurt, he'd be a nice guy to put in there. Or if let's say you have a lower end starter, you're looking at QB 10 or 11, a Derek Carr or a Joe Burrow or something, Sam Darnold may be an upgrade for you there.
Mm-hmm.
If he's available. Yeah. Moving on to DFS for this week, Spencer, we want to talk some DFS and your value picks for this week. You really went into the bargain bin. The highest guy there is 5,300 on DraftKings. So build your lineup around Spencer here, and you're going to have some lumber to throw around at the other spots.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like doing this because then you can basically, if you go cheap with about 3 or 4 guys, then you can basically spend whatever on everything else. So you could have these 4 and then elite assets everywhere else. So to start Mac Jones, yeah, this is a perfect get-right spot for Mac Jones, who showed promise last week in the Brady-Belichick match. He actually outplayed Brady. It was surprising. I was pleasantly surprised there. I think he'll do great this week facing the Texans, who just seem like they're falling apart as we speak. So I think he's a great value for those that want to wait on QBs. Kenneth Gainwell at 4,900 is a really good value right now because he's eating into Miles Sanders' workload. If he keeps this up, he could very well end up the starter there in Philadelphia. And he's a good pass catcher, great PPR option. Receiver Darnell Mooney, he saw a big uptick in targets and yards and everything last week. And so I think him and Justin Fields are starting to get a connection. So assuming Fields is back under center this week, which is looking like it might be, I think Mooney could have another good week. And then tight end, I think Tyler Conklin bounces back this week. I think it's a good get-right spot for him. They played the Browns last week, has a better matchup this week, I believe, against Detroit. So I think in Conklin there at 3,500, a great bargain at the tight end spot.
Yeah, and he was one of our pickup recommendations last week and has continued to produce, and maybe another answer at tight end, which is not, as we said, tight end is not as shallow of a position as it was last year. I mean, all of a sudden you've got some options there.
Yeah, it's good to see because normally, like you mentioned earlier, it's a wasteland. It's usually just complaining. Like, well, maybe he took like Robert Tonyan, who's been nothing, or Logan Thomas, who got here. Like, oh man, what do I do? Well, now he's like, well, look, they got Tyler Conklin, Dawson Knox, Dalton Schultz. I mean, he got options to pick up. It's not like there's nobody out there.
Yeah, I have a couple of shares of Logan Thomas, and I think if you'd told me before the year, like Logan Thomas is going to get hurt week 4, I'd say, oh man, that's a big blow. But I don't feel terrible. I mean, there's 3 or 4 options on the waiver wire, depending on how long Thomas is out for, where I think I can mix and match and make it work for a few weeks. So we'll see. My DFS values, I have to tell you, I went with Daniel Jones, who just was tremendous, I thought, in the Superdome. Obviously, always brings that rushing ability, but he's been in a couple of smash spots this year, and now he gets Dallas. And I know the Dallas defense has been pretty good, and Condre Diggs has had an interception in every game, but they've also been in some shootouts, right? They've been in a shootout against Tampa Bay. They were in a shootout against Carolina. They were in somewhat of a shootout against the Chargers. That was a weird game because there was penalties and real long drives, but the offenses weren't really being stopped either. And I feel like Jones can go toe-to-toe with Dak Prescott. We'll talk more about this at the book on Thursday, but I like the over in that game too, Giants and Cowboys. I think that could turn into a shootout. Giants offense better than people think, and I also put on there my wide receiver, Kadarius Toney. Saints fans saw what he could do. Sterling Shepard may or may not be back. Maybe that cuts into Toney's share. But, hey, sometimes DFS is about taking risks. And for 4,000, you take a flyer on Toney. The guy is electric with the ball in his hands. He gets something on a crossing route. He can make a big play. He could get you a touchdown. He could win you some money. And then at running back, I chose Leonard Fournette. I have to say, because and my reasoning here is he finally looks like he's kind of shaken off Ronald Jones to be the primary ball carrier in Tampa Bay. But I will say, Spencer, I was tempted here. I was real tempted to just put Derrick Henry. And I know Derrick Henry is like 8,900 or something. But if you think after the week the Jacksonville Jaguars have had and that Urban Meyer has had, that they are going to be in any mood to stop Derrick Henry on Sunday, I think you got to pay up for it. I mean, like he's just in the smash spot of all smash spots.
Yeah, most definitely. Hey, you could pair up him and Kenny Gainwell and have a nice duo. Yeah, that's definitely go get Henry. He's just we already know he's 100 yards. That would be nothing for him. It's more of a question will he get 200.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say he's not a value per se because he's the most expensive player on the slate just about, but like I feel like you almost have to have him this week, or you at least have to put him in some of your lineups because the guy facing Jacksonville, Tennessee's coming off of a terrible loss to the Jets. They're going to want to put the hammer down, beat Jacksonville, take them out of the game. And like I said, this does not seem like a circle the wagons moment to me in Jacksonville. Urban Meyer is in charge of a dumpster fire right now, and he's the one who lit the match. And I just don't know. I mean, they're professionals. They're going to play with professional pride. But when it's the third and fourth quarter and you've been hit by Derrick Henry 15 times already, I just don't know they're going to be in the mood to stop it. And then at tight end for my DFS value, I went with TJ Hawkinson. I just feel like he's a little bit undervalued here. He's had a couple of down weeks in a row, but still at 5,500, pretty nice bargain there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. I like Hawkinson a lot. I'm definitely sticking with him. I had a league where I picked up Knox, and I was like, man, he actually outdid Hawkinson. But I'm going to stick with Hawk, man. He's money in the bank. They've kind of taken him out the game the past couple of weeks. But I think with some of the other receivers doing stuff there in Detroit, they can't focus all their attention on Hawkinson.
Yeah, and the Lions have also had a couple of tougher defensive matchups in a row, so maybe they get to another spot where they can go to Hawk a little bit more. We want to take some time to talk about trades before we end the show. So we've done 4 weeks worth. We're about a little less than a third of the way through a fantasy regular season. If you are going to make a move, now is a good time to do it. And first thing we want to do is talk about sell high and buy low. Spencer, what are your philosophies as far as sell high and buy low? What are you looking for there, and what makes sense to you as a fantasy owner?
For sure, yeah. I always say for sell high, I try and sell to guys that are off to huge starts that aren't getting the touches per se. Like guys like the ones that had on there, Cordarrelle Patterson, Marquise Brown. I mean, Brown's getting a decent amount of looks, but also you got to factor in they've got the Rashad Bateman, the rookie there, out injured. So when he comes back, that could hurt Hollywood's target share. So I feel like Patterson and Brown are both guys that are, they're off to great starts, but if you can move them, go ahead, because I don't think there's any way they keep it up because they're not high volume guys. So I would say for sell high, my philosophy is trade away the low volume guys that have produced really efficient numbers so far.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I think you see the two that I have on my list are Deebo Samuel and Jalen Hurts. And yes, they're off to terrific starts. And yes, you should keep them if you can't find value. Like the key word here is high. We're trying to sell high. So you've like, if you're not getting value for Deebo Samuel or Jalen Hurts, then don't sell them. But it's at least worth exploring. Deebo Samuel, could I get a top 5 wide receiver for him? Could I get a DeAndre Hopkins for him? Maybe you can. And the idea being that down the road, DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to be more involved in the Cardinals offense, have bigger games than Deebo Samuel down the road. Doesn't mean we want to get rid of Deebo Samuel, but if you can trade up for him, if you can profit from that trade and sell him at his highest point, then it's worth it. You're talking to a guy who in fantasy baseball season, I sold Shohei Ohtani at the All-Star break. And by the way, it was a disaster because I traded him for Jacob deGrom, and Jacob deGrom never started for me. But my point is, like, Shohei Ohtani, he was fine in the second half. He wasn't nearly what he was in the second half as what he was in the first half. And it hurt to trade him, and it especially hurt because the guy I got was deGrom, and he was hurt. But I don't regret it because he was never going to be as good as he was in that first half. And at the All-Star break, I was getting extreme value for. I also got Austin Riley in that deal, who was a pretty good third baseman the rest of the way. And so, like, did I want to trade Ohtani? No. But if you get blown away, if you're getting the number one starting pitcher in the game for him, you got to think about it. And that's where Deebo Samuel, do you want to trade him? No, he's been great. Jalen Hurts, he's been great. He's been consistent, like you said. But depending on what your roster looks like, and if you can get extreme value for those guys, like let's say you have Jalen Hurts, but you've also got Matthew Stafford at quarterbackers. You've got another quarterback starter. You're sort of wasting talent there. So if you can trade Jalen Hurts high and slide Stafford into the starting role and get yourself a number one running back or number one receiver in return, hey, no risk it, no biscuit, as they say.
Yes, indeed.
Moving on to buy low, Spencer. What's your philosophy there? What are you looking for when you're looking for guys to buy low?
Yeah, I'd say for buy low, I'm looking at guys that are still, that haven't fallen out of favor in their respective systems, that are still getting touches, and that I feel like if they can just, just get some more breaks, find the end zone more, then they'll do better. So I would say, yeah, definitely target those kind of guys. I believe I had put on my list, Javonte Williams and Allen Robinson, a couple guys that are they're off the slow starts of being blunt, bad starts from a fantasy perspective. And I know a lot of y'all are probably really disappointed with Javonte, being that he still hadn't ever had a breakout week there and is still stuck in a timeshare with Melvin Gordon. But I feel okay about him because he's still getting quality touches. It's still a 50-50 split. It's not like he's falling out of favor there in Denver. And I think as the year goes on, he'll continue to see more work, kind of like Jonathan Taylor last year. And by the second half, he could be a league winner. And then Allen Robinson is just somebody that he's too proven not to bounce back. I know Mooney outpaced him this week, but I just see he's too good. I feel like his talent's going to win out at the end. I know the Bears are a dumpster fire, but shoot, considering how bad of a start he's off to, you could probably get him for pennies on the dollar at this point.
And that's exactly what it's about, is finding a guy who is going to produce more than what you're paying for him. And that's where DeAndre Hopkins, are you going to be able to buy him low, like low? No, you're going to have to give something up for the guy. He's a top 5 wide receiver. He's proven that for years. But assuming you think he's going to bounce back and be a top 5 wide receiver, what if you could pay top 10 wide receiver price or even top 15 wide receiver price? Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, you're going to have to give up somebody good. But if you could give up, what would you think about a DJ Moore for D-Hop trade, Spencer? Like if DJ Moore's been a top 5 guy so far, and so you might be able to get Hopkins for him if you think Hopkins is better for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see it. I wouldn't be like super gung-ho about it. I'd probably rather do, like we mentioned, the Debo for Hopkins deal, because I trust the Panthers offense more than the 49ers with the quarterbacks shifting and stuff in San Francisco. I like Debo a lot, but I would say he'd probably be a little better sell than Moore. I feel like Moore in that system I think he could actually outdo Hopkins, considering that they've got a lot of other weapons in Arizona.
My other buy low candidate on there was David Montgomery, and that's sort of the other option is if you have a guy who's injured, yes, he's going to be out 5 to 6 weeks. But let's say that the guy who owns Montgomery also owns Christian McCaffrey, also owns Michael Thomas, also, somebody else who's already using their IR spot. Now, all of a sudden, David Montgomery's dead weight for that team for the next few weeks. And that can be a problem for some teams. And so maybe you can jump in if you've got a little bit of roster flexibility, give up a decent piece for a David Montgomery. And yeah, he's going to be out 5 or 6 weeks, but if you have a hole at running back, guess what you're going to have for the playoffs? You're going to have David Montgomery, presumably healthy by that time. Again, there's some risk factor involved here, but it could really pay off for you.
Right. Yeah, he's somebody I like Montgomery because when he's healthy, he seems like he's always the workhorse. He's very consistent in him getting the carry. So yeah, he'll be out a little while, but yeah, if you have the space, he's definitely a good buy low. And I also think Michael Thomas could be a good buy low as well, because I know the Saints offense has been up and down this year, but I think when he comes back, he's gonna go back to being the target hog because no one's emerged. Callaway, Harris, they're not volume guys. They're not target hogs. So, I think a lot of people with the Saints losing to the Giants think, Michael Thomas, that offense, it's a train wreck. He's not going to do anything when he comes back. But I think he could still put up top 10 receiver numbers when he comes back for PPR because of the way he's with Peyton loves peppering him because he's that volume guy, the slant. He runs those slants, a slant boy, but he produces, man. He puts up numbers. So
what's wrong with slant boy if you're catching 11 for 130 every week? I mean,
exactly.
We'll take it.
Exactly.
The Saints are interesting, Spencer. It's interesting you bring them up because that offense has been bad. I really think Sean Payton is trying to get through. They've got an early bye week. They play Washington this week, then they got the bye week. I think they're trying to get through to that bye week. And believe me, this week was a blow to that, because had they won this week, then you're looking at worst case scenario 3-2 going into that bye. Michael Thomas is supposed to be back after the bye week. Traquan Smith's going to be back. They can at least hope that Eric McCoy and Teron Armstead are back, their offensive linemen who are out. People say Sean Payton needs to take the reins off Jameis Winston. If he's going to do it, that's when he's going to do it, is after the bye, when he's got Michael Thomas back, when he's got his offensive lineman back, Traquan Smith. Then all of a sudden we might see some more downfield throws, and Michael Thomas, like you say, could be a big beneficiary of that.
Right. Yeah, I could see him coming back and being the WR1 for sure, because I feel like they're going to have to start letting Jameis throw it more. You can't keep running Kamara as much as they are.
If we did not get to one of your questions today, and you do have a fantasy question, or you come up with one later in the week, feel free to ask Spencer on Twitter or Instagram. You couldn't have done it yesterday. Instagram was MIA yesterday, but now you can. And he is at Spencer the Guru on both of those social media platforms. Spencer, you get a good question to answer this week from readers already?
Oh, yeah. Some dude asked me on IG about Dak or Herbert rest of season, and that was a tough one. But I've got to go with Herbert, man, because I feel like the Chargers are a more pass-friendly, fantasy-friendly team. Cowboys this year looking like they're shifting their philosophy to more defense and running the ball. So with that factored in, I'm giving the edge to Herb.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You're in a good spot if you've got both of those guys, but choose one and maybe try to sell the other one and get something for it. I heard a question this week from our Javi Wynn, who's our copy editor and page designer at The Advocate. What's up with the running backs position this year? And this is really a multi-year trend, right, where it's hard to get a top-tier running back. You've got maybe 10 guys, your McCaffreys, your Camaras, your Henrys, your Dalvin Cook, even going down to Saquon Barkley or Zeke Elliott. They're going to get Austin Eckler's on that list now. They're going to get the lion's share of the targets or of the carries and the targets in the passing game. They're a 3-down back. But assuming every team in a 12-team league gets maybe one of those guys, everybody is struggling to find that RB2 or that flex at the running back position. Is that a trend that you see continuing? How do you manage running backs in your leagues?
Yeah, I would say it'll unfortunately continue because of the fact that running backs are the most injury-prone position. So, the key is just always making sure you have quality depth at the position. I know it's easier said than done, but just keep scouring the wire. Try to get a Damian Williams, some Ajay Perine type player this week. Make sure you're keeping up with that, because if you don't, you're gonna get left behind with the running backs, because it's very fluid. It changes every week. So just, as long as you keep up with it each week, you should be able to at least hold water there, because on waivers, they tend to a lot of times be a Damian Williams type that people don't tend to handcuff unless it's an elite handcuff like Alexander Madison type. So I'm sure Williams and those types are out there to solve short-term running back dilemmas.
And sometimes you want to think ahead on that stuff. I mean, look at guys who have been injury prone. Who is the handcuff? Austin Eckler's a good example. Austin Eckler's been injured a lot in his career. Larry Roundtree looks pretty good. He's the Chargers' backup. Maybe if you've got an extra spot. I had Tony Jones in a couple of my leagues as a handcuff. I didn't have Kamara, but if Kamara happened to go out, I'm sitting pretty because I've got Tony Jones. Now, it was Tony Jones who got hurt and is out, and now I'm going to drop him. But you kind of got to think ahead on some of that stuff and see if you can't hit a lotto ticket. If you hold 2 or 3 handcuff shares, all it takes is for one of them to hit, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a second starting running back. So it's an interesting thing you've got to do, but you've got to kind of play that game on the waiver wire, like you said, and really just almost recalibrate your definition of what an RB2 is, because you're probably not going to get that 3-down back unless you use your first 2 picks on running backs. And even then, in some cases, you're probably not going to have an RB2 who's a 3-down, 25 carry a game running back.
Right. Yeah, those are few and far between. Too. It's hard to even get your RB1 that many touches these days. So yeah, definitely stay on top of that because that can a lot of times make or break people in leagues because if you get a donut from your RB2, that's tough to overcome.
All right, Spencer, any final thoughts on the fantasy football week that was or what you're looking forward to this weekend?
Not too much. I would just say just just target those good matchups. I think the Texans and the Jags are the two biggest punching bags right now. So I'd say load up on your Tennessee Titans. Even if Julio and AJ Brown miss, maybe target some of those deeper receivers if you need a deep league flex play. And then the Patriots, man, like Jacoby Myers, a great sleeper option for this week. Because he's been targeted a lot, trending up, and against the Texans, I think he'll keep that going for sure. And yes, just keep pushing forward, y'all. We got a long way to go. I know some of y'all are off to tough starts. I know I'm got a mixed bag. I'm more good than bad, but the one leagues I'm bad in. Just got to keep pushing and then hope that it turns around. Just keep up, and if you do all you can do, at least the odds are it'll turn around. So just keep fighting.
Yeah, sometimes patience is a great skill in fantasy sports. So keep that in mind. If you want more of Spencer's thoughts, he is on bet.NOLA.com every Tuesday and Thursday with a new column. And he's also on Twitter and Instagram at Spencer the Guru. And he will be in the print editions of The Advocate and Times-Picayune every Friday during football season as well with some matchups. So we will be back next Tuesday here on Fantasy Roundup. For Spencer the Guru Urquhart, I'm Zach Ewing, and we'll see you next time.